We'd appreciate all the effort that you guys put into following us. That would be great. Thanks so much.
Mm-hmm. So great. Thank you.
Moving onwards, sir.
Shall we?
We shall.
Shall I take it off?
You shall take it off, sir. And were you being punny?
No, but you fell into that. Just take it off. Just take it off.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, so
whatever.
So okay,
yeah,
YouTube. Here we go.
Yeah.
So the next thing I'll introduce the next one we're going to talk about. It's going to be we're going back to vertical takeoff and landing vehicles that are in the news. And the big one here it's called Joby Aviation, and I found this article that talks about how Joby Aviation is going to try to go public. Possibly, it's not confirmed. But if you're not aware, what is Joby Aviation? It's a startup, basically started over in Santa Cruz, California, back 2009, and they were looking to make a electric vertical takeoff and landing vehicle that was roughly 100 times more quiet than a helicopter. Is what one of their main goals.
Mm-hmm.
They had some decent progression through the years. They had a collaboration with NASA in 2012. For some of their electric propulsion equipment. 2015, they had a scale model of their own vehicle, and then 2019, full-scale testing of the one you see in this beginning of this article here. Since then, well, actually just last year, now we're in 2021, so in 2020, last year, they received actually a United States Air Force initial airworthiness certification for safety for military testing. So, and for anybody involved in aviation, don't let that confuse you too much. It's not FAA certification or airworthiness. It's not certified for civilian use. It's a airworthiness certification that the Air Force can issue to particular companies so that they can do their own testing. The military can do their own testing and use for their own purposes, and then further advance the technology. And it is a step towards civilian certification, but they're not quite there yet. They over the years they end up being partnered with Toyota now, and then also Intel, and then Capricorn Investment. That's another investment firm that's also backing SpaceX and Tesla.
Really?
And their vehicle is now saying they go up to 200 miles per hour maximum speed, 150 miles plus range about, let's say. And obviously, it's total electric is one of their main things. It'd be totally electric, so no CO2 byproducts. And the currently one is 5 seats, one of which is a pilot currently, but they do plan to have it be automated, as you've heard us talk about other vertical takeoff and landing or drone or that kind of stuff, as a lot of those companies are trying to go. Also, to give you slightly more backstory there, they did get, or rather Uber, air taxi service. If you're not aware, Uber has their air taxi service was working on. They sold that whole business to Joby. So again, in the future, when Joby gets their stuff certified and all ready to go, they'll probably be looking really get going. And it's so we talked to Lilium on one of the past streams, how they're at Germany. This is an American one, kind of making some good progress too. Over here on this side of the pond.
Very interesting. So, the design is very strange to me because they seem to go with the outboards are nacelles, they're full tilting nacelles, but the inboards seem to be where the actual motor itself ejects out of the pod and goes into a vertical format.
Isn't that interesting? The two on the front, as you said, I don't know if you guys can see in the picture there, but the two as Mike is saying there, there's 2 nacelles in the front.
Yeah, these 2 right here where the arrow is.
They rotate on an arm on the top side of that nacelle to rotate the rotor.
Right.
Rather than rotating the whole nacelle like you may have seen in old V-22s or Ospreys, if you're familiar with those. So
now, another interesting thing is
I'm wondering how they're integrating the batteries in this.
That's another interesting thing. That would be nice to see, because when I look inside the cabin, I would only think that the subfloor is so small that if the batteries were going to be part of the CG, they'd probably have to be all aligned in the section behind the tail, and then some would have to actually flow underneath the baseboards here to kind of keep that weight shift a little bit forward, because I wonder where their arm is. But the other thing that's really interesting to me, look at the tips of the blades. They're going for that. They said that their whole goal is to be quieter than a helicopter, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So
that's one of their main goals.
So they got that. They have the dihedral tip blades on here, which I can see, and I can see that they're counter rotating because the way that the twists are going in each blade.
Yep.
Which
Shape,
ironically, that should be less sound. However, if you've ever heard an osprey fly over, okay, ospreys are obliteratingly loud. They beat the air into submission. I thought helicopters were loud, and look, on colder days when you feel that sonic boom come off the tips of the rotors on a helicopter, it sounds like somebody's firing a gun outside your door. It can. Okay, even even the tail rotor can make even really, really, really loud echoous sounds, and you can hear them. And trust me, I know, and you know too, because we've been up in them many, many hours.
Yep.
I'd like to see if they've achieved their goal at 100 times. Quieter than helicopters.
Yeah, I don't know. I couldn't find any actual figures of decibels at any particular altitude or distance for these things yet. The only thing that I was able to find was one editor who was nearby an airport where they were testing it, and he said, he thought that as it was flying, it wouldn't be intrusive in the sense that I'm paraphrasing, but that it would fit into a normal urban environment. It wouldn't be like, oh, boom, you could be walking down the street in the city and be like, oh, I can hear one of those because I can. It wouldn't be that. It just kind of fall into the normal sound of. But
what you would hear. It's interesting. I'd like to see more about this. Obviously, it's not the everyone. It was really funny because the response from people saying that GM had a fantastic CES with the introduction of their quote unquote. I'm like, they didn't introduce anything. They showed you
what
graphics.
Is that thing?
So a 2-seat flying whatever. And looking at this, look, I looked at some of their older images and I'm impressed. Because if you go back to what I have on the screen now, which is some of their older designs from 2014, it didn't seem like they were counting on the structure of the wing to produce any lift. However, if you go back into this version, it looks like they may be expecting some of this part of the airframe to actually support, especially with the nacelles having to twist into the forward position. You're probably going to be getting some lift out of that. It looks like there might even be some surface area here that might be active. I don't know. Or maybe from this side.
If you want to Google the Volocopter, that's one of their other designs.
Like YOLO?
The Volocopter.
Okay.
I'm asking you to take a look at it because that first design you showed a minute ago, it kind of has that feeling as well. The Volocopter is another company.
Yeah. I've seen this one before.
You might have seen, and it's really the Volocopter. This isn't really work. We'll talk about it just for a minute, but it's really like goes into that kind of quote drone kind of
technology,
setup, less like a modification to an airplane / helicopter or vertical takeoff and lift like the Osprey. This is kind of like straight drone, And even I know we talked about Lilium as well, and Lilium also is not like the drone. The typical drone kind of setup. This is, I think, what's the Volocopter got? 12
something. I'm looking at it right now. It's on screen. It's got quite a few. And so here's the difference, right? This is when I look at the Volocopter and I think about myself to the future of aviation, going to air taxis / these quadcopter things, right? Look, the helicopter design survived for such a long time because in its own inefficiencies and the amount of maintenance that it required, and even the rotor head designs being what they were, they still had some sort of level of controllability that had a precision that offset the performance. Okay, that's why it's almost like a tool. The helicopter's always been more like a tool. And the problem that I see with these is I don't see the significance of them beyond that point right now. They've got to make that jump to being tool worthy. Because air transport in helicopters, as far as an actual paid for service, except for oil platforms in the Gulf of Mexico, it's a bad business model. It's very expensive to get a helicopter to move people 250 miles in the air. It's usually 3 times more expensive than it is towards a fixed wing counterpart. So
and sometimes the people that may not be in the industry may not know that when you fly an aircraft, whether it be airplane or helicopter, there are figures established for how much maintenance has to happen behind the scenes for every hour that vehicle flies. Equates into roughly an amount of time frame in hours, which you can compute to cost.
Correct.
And maintenance that must happen with. And airplanes are less maintenance required, overall than helicopters. So helicopters, they have great utility, as you said, and it's a great tool for things you need to do that an airplane can't do or wouldn't be suited best to do, but they are expensive.
They're expensive. And that's my biggest thing is right now everybody's going in for this 2-person, 4-person, commuter status with these air taxis. And where my mind goes is There isn't successful models on this working any place except for major industrialized cities across the globe where traffic is really a congestion issue, where people want to get around that, and where there might be people with disposable income that could take care of this, because until they make that quote unquote highway in the sky, I still see a lot of bloatware. Now, I will tell you who I'd be impressed by if they actually produce something like this. And you know who I would... Well, first of all, the first one that would come to mind would be Boston Dynamics. If they had some sort of quadcopter robot, okay, I would be super impressed. But the other group that would be is DARPA, okay?
Yes.
So there hasn't been a full DARPA competition yet, because if there's going to be a level of technology that makes that jump out of the experimental prototype range and into the real world, DARPA's usually that launch pad.
So just to expand again, something else I saw about Joby that you may or may not know is the Air Force also has a program called Agility Prime.
Like Optimus Prime.
Agility Prime is I know the name's a bit funny and all that, but Agility Prime is a spin-off of their program for kind of collaborating with private industry for technology advances. And it's in a way, if you remember the SpaceX prize, you remember that kind of competition was, government going with private entities to get some like things happening. It's like kind of a competition.
Sure.
Agility Prime is kind of, let's say, the Air Force trying to do similar things.
We could register for it.
Yeah. Well, this was now the website you're at, that was a symposium last year.
Oh, there it is. Join the Air Race. Yeah. What is Agility Prime? Air Force recently launching Agility Prime.
Yeah, Air Race, you can just read it there if you want, but basically what they're trying to do is a race to certification, to clarify what they're meaning. So they have, I think they said 200 companies participating in this program, and they're trying to help, again, really kick off the, let's say, industrial revolution for, VTOL vehicles. So I'm still trying to dig through Agility Prime. I just found that this morning, trying to see what all companies are in there.
Right.
Since it's private companies, I don't think I'll find DARPA in there, but I am looking for that actually. Now, you mentioned that, I am been looking for that. Lilium is in there, I believe. So there's things going on.
I got a question for you. So you and I have lots of experience in rotorcraft. Okay, we've both flown many hours in helicopters, instructed lots of people. If you were to turn around and get into a helicopter, and the very first thing that you saw, instead of an actual cyclic and a collective and pedals, and you saw an iPad, would you do it? Would you fly it?
You say that, and I've already seen some systems like that. I think ironically, I think that system I'm thinking of was in a freaking R22, if I'm not mistaken, or an R44, one or the other, and it was just exactly that. It was literally teaching, or not teaching even. It was taking a certified pilot in the right seat, and then they have a person who has no flying experience in the left seat. And with like 5 minutes of instruction, they're on the runway, they get the aircraft started up, and the guy's like, all right, so I told you about the button takes off and keeps a stable hover, and then you have this button to like take off. And they literally have this person who has no experience flying the helicopter in like 15 minutes using an iPad.
Okay. So that doesn't answer the question. Would you?
I know. Would I get in it and fly it knowing what I know how to actually fly?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, man. It's
okay.
Because it leaves you no backup.
Okay, right. Okay.
One thing we talk about when we're pilots, you do risk assessment, right?
Yes.
What's the risk by doing this? And do I have any backup options if something doesn't go quite to plan?
True.
I've got and just for some sort of perspective, right? We're both pilots. We've flown around with iPads, that have multiple things on it.
Sure.
Electronic flight deck for pilots.
Sure.
Things happen. They heat up. They shut down randomly. Random stuff happens, right?
Oh, all the time.
Okay. Now imagine. Imagine that happens.
So wait, forget about that. So here's my point of view, right? So what are the 3 most dangerous things that I would consider happening when I was flying a helicopter? Number 1 in the training environment would be settling with power, okay, or vortex ring state. Someone's high rate of descent. Helicopters do not like high rates of descent with low airspeed. That's just a combination to enter this envelope that is very dangerous in its flight flight regime. Okay, the other one is loss of tail rotor effectiveness. What a lot of people don't understand is just because it has a tail rotor doesn't mean that it's always effective. Wind and air spilling off the main rotor interferes with it all the time, and you'll be using the anti-torque pedals, and you'll come across a region where suddenly the helicopter no longer wants to turn. Okay, so you need a feel for that. That's not a thing that an iPad, I'm sure the iPads can be adjusted for that, so on and so forth, but it's that feel. And then lastly, in an autorotative state, right? I wonder if a computer and an iPad has enough information on board to enter an autorotative state, understand momentum, and what the rotor disc has to maintain, and still make a safe landing back on the ground, because
and have accurate height above ground level written indications.
Yes,
I mean,
absolutely.
I don't know if I would trust a radar altimeter to give me proper indications to do an automated flare and landing.
You would need a FLIR system and something that has enough recognition to know the entire terrain in front of you. But here's the last point. Here's the last point. None of these people have addressed total failures, right? I haven't seen. So my idea would be that if one of these systems fails, you pop a parachute, right? Because at the very least.
Yeah, Cessna has some of those other
right. Cirrus has them on their 22s, their fixed wing aircraft. But the thing for me would be, if it is a full on failure, A, now I'm stuck with an iPad, and B, if it's actually a lights out situation and I lose all power, do I get one last button for, like, is there an oh shit panic button that suddenly saves the day?
Yeah. Just hold the power button down.
So it's something to think about for air taxis, and we'll explore this more in lots more conversations, right? There's so much more. We could go through all the horror stories of stuff we had happen while we're flying, because I've got them.
Right. I mean, and it's something else, just to, put it in perspective. Anybody who maybe not be a pilot out there watching this, right? Just think about what you do if you're driving down a road, not a highway, but just a road, and you blow a tire. What do? Well, you pull over.
Yeah, you don't have that option.
You pull over. And you get out and you're like, oh crap, my tire's blown. Okay, what's happened? Hopefully you didn't hit anybody as you pulled over, but that's it. You're done. If things go bad flying, not even electric vehicles, just anything, just flying a plane, regular plane. Well, you can't pull over. That's the whole point. Like, you're flying and got to land, and the worst thing that really can happen in a nutshell, right? If we just generalize everything, is if you bump into something while you fly, right? If you bump into something or you're on fire, those are pretty bad stuff, and you can't pull over. So it goes back to really looking. Hopefully, as we get back to the subject at hand here, Joby, is I'm curious again about all of their safety mitigations with failures, because something's going to fail at some point. Nothing is 1,000% bulletproof.
True. And it's also pilot error, right? So the other part of it is when you're in an iPad flying situation and thinking about the future, and you touch the wrong thing in the iPad, guess what? Unless there's a sensitive enough system on board that aircraft to prevent you from doing something stupid, you're going to go in that direction. And forget about the fact of having taught people how to fly helicopters just like you have, and that experience of people get task saturated in those environments. And believe it or not, their sensitization, because your body is sensitized to certain activities, your adrenaline's pumping, there's all sorts of different bodily reactions, and you get yourself into this environment and you're overwhelmed. It's easy for people to make mistakes in those environments. We've seen it throughout human history, without a doubt. So it's just something to keep in mind about how these things develop as air taxis in the future. And I think the more that I talk about this, I think it's going to be one of those things that we specialize in, because I'll tell you, if somebody approached me tomorrow and said, look, we'd like you to be an air taxi development pilot, and there's going to be a safety set of controls and an iPad in there at all times until we get this thing developed, I'd be like, sign me up. Put me on board. I'll do it.
Exactly. I'm totally down with that.
I'm down with that.
Lilium, as we mentioned in a previous segment, we talked about how Lilium itself is putting a vertiport into Florida. Not too far, where I couldn't get there if I need to, but I'm totally down to be part of that.
Put my application in. I'm ready for it. And I know I have more than enough hours. You know what's even funnier, though, than that, Corey, is I was just thinking about when it comes to safety and that nature, I spent 10 years flying helicopters until I actually started up and flew my, a fixed wing, which is funny to go that route, because you and I both did the same exact thing, right? And it's ironic, though. I did feel a bit safer when I got into the airplane for the first time, and I knew that if the engine stalled, at the very least, it would glide. That was comforting.
Just push it forward enough, pitch it forward, and then figure out what you're going to do.
All right, why don't you close out that segment and ask the nice people to do pleasant things for us?
Yeah, so I'll just summarize this up and then we'll turn it out. So again, the article was about Joby going public.
Yeah.
We didn't quite get there.
No.
But basically, I think the main thing I'll highlight out of there was that they are possibly looking for investment banks to solicit through SPACs. So they're special purpose acquisition companies, if you're not aware how that works.
No idea.
So being the case, there's really no news for me to give you right now on how to maybe get in on a public offering for Joby right at this time.
Gotcha.
Because there's not much there. It's yeah. So if there's more stuff that I'll follow through with that and kind of keep you guys up to speed on how that goes. But currently, that's the main news. The big takeaway, obviously, is that there's still things happening in this sector, and we're going to keep tracking it for you guys.
Sure.
And yeah, I'd be happy to. So other than that, thanks for hanging out with us. Thanks for please like, subscribe, all that stuff. We very much appreciate it. It helps us continue what we're doing and bring more cool content, interesting stuff to you. To brighten up your days and maybe help you make some decision
right,
with
you're getting sappy now.
Stuff you do later. So.
Brighten up your day.
What'd you say?
Hey, I said you're getting sappy. Look, Roscoe's not amused. He doesn't even care, actually. He's just passed out.
Roscoe doesn't know English, I don't think.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he doesn't. Anyhow, on that note, yeah, like, subscribe, follow, and I'm just giving Corey some crap. Sorry, Corey. Love you.
It's fine.
Anyhow, we're moving on.